Hey everyone! ChatGPT Taylor aka Taylor here. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is something a little bit different. Last season, I posted a video where I talked about what each of the final 10 campers of Disventure Camp All-Stars needed to do in order to win the season. And now that we're at the final 10 of Season 4 and nearly halfway through the season, I think it's time to talk about what each of these new 10 campers need to do in order to win this season. So for each camper, I will be going over 5 steps that I think they each need to follow in order for them to win the show. And with that, let's get started. Before I begin, make sure to like and subscribe if this video is to your liking, and make sure to comment down below if there's anything that you would like to see going forward. First up, let's talk about Zaid. Zaid's game just suffered a major setback when his showman's partner Ivy was voted out. I could see Zaid pulling off an underdog story and sneaking out a win, but there are a few things that Zaid needs to do in order to make that happen. Step 1. Semi-apologize to your teammates. I understand Zaid's outburst at the elimination ceremony, and I think his feelings towards being betrayed are completely valid. That being said, if Zaid wants to survive, he needs to act like nothing's wrong and make his teammates believe that he's still willing to work with them. If he can't do this, then he's pretty much ostracizing half of the remaining campers, which isn't exactly the best strategy from a game-centric standpoint. If he can make himself seem approachable despite the previous ceremony, he can then start step 2. Position yourself as a swing vote. With Ivy gone, people are going to assume that Zaid is a free agent and that he might be willing to flip sides if needed. If Zaid can lean into this idea, he can keep himself safe by making the other campers feel like they need him if they want to establish a majority at the merge. From there, Zaid can finally have control of his game and decide who he wants to move forward with as his new allies, setting the course for the rest of his game. And after he makes that decision, he can move into step 3. Find a new number 1 ally. With Ivy gone, Zaid needs someone that he can trust 100%. I thought that could be Benji, but that might be difficult considering the last ceremony. I think a good candidate could be Richard. He doesn't have any set allies either, and both Richard and Zaid are motivated by their dedication to their families. So I think those two could be a great pair if they can just talk to each other. And if they talk to each other, this might help Zaid accomplish step 4. Let the other campers keep fighting. In general, I don't think Zaid has been very problematic. Up until his blow-up in episode 12, Zaid has generally been pretty calm. So if he can find that calm zone again and let the other campers keep fighting, he could fly under the radar long enough to survive a few rounds. Let Hannah fight with Spencer. Let Richard fight with Natalia. Let Benji make a bigger fool of himself. Anything to keep the target off of his own back. And while everyone is focused on each other, Zaid can focus on step 5. Push your physicality. To my knowledge, Zaid hasn't been horrible in challenges. Zaid knocked out Natalia in episode 5, was one of the last 2 campers remaining in episode 9, lasted long enough to win a round for his team in episode 11, and also got Anastasia back to the line in the same episode. So, there's a chance that Zaid could be physical enough to win a few challenges. And if he times it right, he could manage to win his way to the finale, where he's one challenge away from winning the grand prize. There's definitely a road to victory for Zaid, but it's definitely an uphill battle right now. With that being said, let's move on to the camper who Zaid is currently upset at, which is Benji. I think Benji has a pretty decent chance at winning the season with his Zero to Hero storyline. But if he does want to win, there are some steps that he needs to follow. Step 1. Make sure Zaid doesn't hate you. At the end of episode 12, Zaid called out Benji for his betrayal over Ivy's elimination. This is not ideal for Benji, since Zaid was one of the few people in the game who actually liked him. After all, Isabel and Jade were upset that Benji spied on him. The other team has never formally met him, and while Hannah is aligned with Benji, Hannah has reminded Benji of his parents, which isn't a positive thing. So, Benji really needs to get Zaid on his side, because otherwise Zaid could feel vengeful enough to either flip on his team, or convince Jade and Isabel to vote him out by a vote of 3 to 2. Now we have step 2. Let Hannah do the talking. I know that Benji isn't too happy that Hannah is going against his strategic wishes, but Benji also knows that people don't usually respond well when he does the talking. So, if he wants to be able to get his plans across, I think he needs to rely on Hannah a little bit in order to effectively convince others that his plans make sense. I wouldn't be shocked if Benji manages to grow into a better communicator with Hannah's help. But for now, he should probably let Hannah do the talking. Following that step will allow Benji to accomplish step 3. Sit back and observe. I think one of Benji's best assets in this game is his ability to just observe and reach reasonable conclusions. Notably, he correctly deduced that Jade and Spencer were aligned, and correctly noted how interesting it was that Spencer sent Isabel to the red team, where Isabel and Jade immediately bonded. So I think if Benji continues to sit back and observe others, and assuming that he does a better job of not getting caught, he could learn some useful information that could help his game. This could help him execute the next step on this list. Step 4. Connect with the other team's campers. As of now, his current teammates' perception of him is quite mixed. Zaid hates him, Jade and Isabel know that he tried to spy on him, and although Hannah is nice to him, she does talk down to him at times. So, I think Benji would benefit from trying to make friends with some of the campers on the other team. If he learns from his mistakes when he interacted with his current teammates, maybe he'll be able to make a good impression on the other team and find some new allies who respect him. But if all else fails, I think Benji would benefit from step 5. Emphasize inadequacy. I get the impression that people in this season don't really view Benji as much of a threat. And if people don't see Benji as a threat, they won't feel that he's a major danger to their games. So, if Benji is okay with keeping up the appearance of someone who is a bit silly, while hiding his smart and observant personality, he might be able to fly under the radar long enough for him to pop up near the end, make it to the finale with someone beatable, and win the season. It might seem a bit far-fetched, but I wouldn't mind at all if he won this season. Branching off from Benji, let's talk about his closest ally, which is Hannah. I could imagine Hannah winning off of her recruit to competitor storyline, but I don't know how likely it is. But if Hannah does want to win, she'll need to accomplish a few steps. Step 1. Watch Benji carefully. Hannah has described Benji as being her ride-or-die ally. At the same time, Benji hasn't had the best luck with interacting with others. I think Benji would be loyal to her as long as she treats him well, but if Benji slips up and does something that makes him a target, he could end up bringing Hannah down with him. So Hannah needs to make sure that Benji doesn't do anything too crazy, while also being compassionate to him, which she's tried to do. I also think Hannah should be ready to cut Benji loose if it gets too bad, but I don't see that happening. But Benji can't be her only ally. Which leads me into step 2. Align with a strategic force. Right now, Hannah has tried to make strategic decisions and they haven't been horrible. However, one of Hannah's main traits is the fact that she's a recruit and doesn't really understand this kind of game. I think she would benefit from having an ally like Jade who is strategically savvy and can help her through the early stages of the merge. Hannah can learn from Jade before taking her out as a big threat, which would allow Hannah to emerge as a strategic force that gets herself to the finale, which would be good for her. Aligning with a strategic force could also help Hannah with the next step. Step 3. Downplay your intelligence/experience. As I mentioned earlier, a big tenet of Hannah's story is that she's a recruit. With this status, people might not think that she's capable of understanding the intricacies of the gameplay required to succeed in Disventure Camp. So if Hannah decided to lean into this belief, she might be able to trick others into thinking that she's not a serious threat, allowing her to potentially fly under the radar until it's too late for people to take her out. However, this strategy could force Hannah into tough situations, which leads me to step 4. Anticipate tough decisions. Due to Hannah's social nature and the potential for her to be viewed as a non-threat, she could end up being caught in the middle if people view her as a potential swing vote. This will inevitably cause her to make enemies as people will know that she shunned them to side with someone else. So, Hannah will have to plan ahead to make sure that when she makes tough decisions, she'll be able to manage others so that it doesn't cause too many people to hate her. That's the cost of being a social camper that seems like a non-threat. And in order to effectively accomplish this, Hannah will have to keep in mind step 5. Remain aware of others' situations. As a bartender, Hannah is probably used to talking to people and becoming aware of their situations. If Hannah wants to win this season, she really needs to make sure that she's aware of how everyone feels, and to alter her words accordingly so that she doesn't risk turning them away if she says something that's normally okay, but bad for the specific situation that she's in. And I'm mainly saying this because of her alliance with Benji. I think Hannah likes Benji, but I get the impression that Benji is starting to get turned away by Hannah's words towards him, specifically with how she shuts down his plans and observations. If Hannah isn't careful, Benji might feel enough negative feelings towards Hannah that he ends up betraying her, and that would be disastrous for Hannah. And that's all it takes for Hannah to win. Emphasizing her social game while quietly flexing her strategic game. And speaking of strategy, let's talk about Jade. Jade is clearly a very strategic individual. But if she wants to win this game, she needs to do more than just exemplify strategy. And that starts with step 1. Connect with people emotionally. Jade needs to remember that in this game, she's not dealing with robots who operate with 100% logic. She's dealing with human beings who have real emotions and will make decisions based on those emotions. So the sooner that she starts connecting with people on an emotional level, the sooner that she will gain an understanding of everyone's motivations, and the easier it will be for her to predict their next moves. Jade has already done this with Isabel, so we know that she's capable of doing this step. She just needs to keep going. However, this leads me into my next step. Step 2. Be wary of her suspicions of Isabel. Jade has shown that she's wary of Isabel's strategy, and I think she's right to assume that Isabel could be more villainous than she lets on. That being said, I think Jade needs to be very concerned about vocalizing these assumptions, because Isabel has a great reputation in the camp right now, so trying to shine a bad light on Isabel could end up hurting Jade's game. If Jade is going to eventually call out Isabel for being two-faced, she either needs more evidence to come to light, or wait for someone else to call her out first. It's all about timing. That's what's important. And while Jade is waiting to do that, she can focus on step 3. Reconnect with Spencer. Spencer was Jade's closest ally for a long while. And considering how Spencer hasn't been able to make any solid allies on the blue team aside from Logan, I think Spencer would be willing to go back to Jade once the merge arrives. Having Spencer on her side would give Jade an ally that's also a shield for her, since people should want to target Spencer before they target Jade. However, Jade should be careful of how close she is to Spencer, since his lack of popularity might make her current allies view her in a poor light. And speaking of her current allies, we now have step 4. Form a majority alliance. Since Jade is very strategic, she should know that having a majority alliance is a common strategy that she can execute. She already has an alliance of 4 with herself, Benji, Hannah, and Isabel. And with Spencer as an extra number, all Jade needs is one more person to gain the majority heading into the merge, even if someone returns to the game. Maybe she can get Isabel to pull Natalia over to their side. That might make some sense, and if that happens, Jade can use this majority to control the game for a little while. But if Jade does do this, then she needs to be aware of one thing. Step 5. Be careful of being perceived as a leader. In general, the strategic force of an alliance is generally seen as the leader. We've seen it with Alec and the Villains Alliance last season. So if Jade is the strategic force of her majority alliance, she needs to be careful of being seen as the leader, because if people decide to revolt against her alliance, she's going to be the primary target. So if Jade wants to win, she needs to remain strategic, but also be aware of how people perceive her, regardless if they're her enemies or allies. Speaking of Jade's allies, let's talk about Isabel. Isabel is in a decent position, since most people don't see her as a threat. I don't see her winning this season, but there's definitely some steps that she could take to get there. And it starts with step 1. Reconnect with alliance members. As it stands, Isabel is in a good spot with Jade, Hannah, and Benji as her allies. However, she still has Natalia and Anastasia on the other team who were also her allies at one point. If the merge arrives in the next episode or 2, Isabel can use her pre-existing connection with Natalia and Anastasia to potentially gain the majority, buying her a few rounds of safety. Having all these allies allows Isabel to start step 2. Hide behind shields. If Isabel does pull together the majority that I mentioned earlier, she'll be surrounded by people who are generally bigger threats than she is. With Jade's strategic presence, Anastasia's vocal nature, and Benji's silly demeanor, Isabel could use them as shields in the event that things go sour for her alliance. And I don't think it'll be difficult for Isabel to hide behind them while she executes her own plans. This leads into step 3. Use your image to your advantage. Right now, with the exception of Jade and Benji, the cast views Isabel as someone who's kind and doesn't want to hurt people. Therefore, I think it would benefit Isabel if she leaned into this label. Especially if she's using people like Jade, Benji, and Anastasia as shields, Isabel could position herself as someone that people would go to for help, which would give her options with how she wants to proceed with her game, allowing her to make the decision that is best for her. One of these decisions is the pillar of step 4. Use your totem wisely. As of the time that I'm making this video, Isabel still has her immunity totem. Right now, I don't think Isabel is in any immediate danger, but that doesn't mean that she can afford to waste her totem. Isabel really needs to exercise good judgment in how she uses it. Does she use it on someone else to paint an image of her being altruistic? Or does she keep it for herself in the event that someone paints a target on her back for being allegedly two-faced? That's the decision that Isabel has to make, and she needs to make it wisely. Because it could be the difference between winning and losing. And above all, we have step 5. Be prepared to show your true colors. Up to this point, it's been teased that Isabel might end up on the side of evil. But regardless of whether or not she actually becomes evil, Isabel will eventually have to lie or betray someone in order to get further in the game. And Isabel needs to figure out what she's going to do once people realize that she's not as peaceful and altruistic as she might seem. If she can't manage people's perception of her from that point on, she'll be out quickly. But if she can temper them long enough for her to get rid of her new enemies, she could make it all the way to the end and win, with or without her allies. Speaking of Isabel's allies, let's move on to Natalia. Natalia is in a weird position where I'm not sure what the plan is for her character. I don't think she's in a winning position, but it's definitely possible for her to get there. She just needs to take care of a few things. And that can all start with step 1. Quell Anastasia's concerns. Back in episode 11, even though Anastasia and Natalia were allies, Natalia helped Linda put up a decent fight in the comeback challenge against Anastasia, which sort of soured the bond between them. If Natalia can just mend fences between them, Natalia will have one less thing to worry about. Maybe if she leverages the idea that she will help Anastasia take out Spencer, Anastasia will put up with her long enough to remain allies. Speaking of allies, that leads into step 2. Reconnect with Isabel. Before Isabel was moved to the red team, Isabel and Natalia were pretty close. And if Natalia isn't too comfortable on her team anymore due to the recent episodes, I can imagine a scenario where Natalia jumps ship and joins Isabel's alliance. Not only would that reunite her with her friendliest ally, but that also puts her one vote away from having a majority alliance, which is great for her game. Speaking of friendliest, that leads right into step 3. Make others feel good. Natalia's strength in this season has been her ability to get along with members of her team, no matter what game-related incidents took place. Even after Richard voiced his disappointment with Natalia after she voted for Spencer in episode 9, by the time that episode 12 rolled around, Natalia and Richard were on much better terms. So, I think Natalia would benefit from playing to her strengths by talking to others and making them feel good about her presence. Hopefully this will help raise their perception of her. However, it's important to keep in mind step 4. Be careful of what you say. Natalia admitted after Marissa's elimination that she should have kept her mouth shut regarding voting for Spencer. While Natalia's communication-based strategy can work, she also has to be careful not to spill any critical information that could ruin her alliance's plans or turn someone against her. It's all about finding a balance. But in the end, we have step 5. Choose your final 2 deal carefully. Up to this point, Natalia hasn't shown too many skills that would prove to be useful in a finale's challenge. She was brought over the line twice in episode 11, she was one of the early ones eliminated in episode 9, and she was hit twice in episode 7. So, Natalia really needs to pick the right person to face in the finale if she wants a good chance at winning. I think someone like Benji or Spencer would be a decent option from a physical standpoint, but mentally is a whole other game. And Natalia needs to plan that ahead of time, because she can't win if she doesn't have a solid number 1 ally. And considering her frayed relationship with Anastasia, she really needs a solid ally. Speaking of Anastasia, let's move on to her next. Now, Anastasia was my winner pick at the beginning of the season. And although I'm less optimistic about her chances than before, I still think that there's a way for her to win the season, provided that she fixes a few aspects of her game. Step 1. Manage your strained relationships. Even though Linda is gone, Anastasia still has some strained relationships with people on her team, such as Natalia and Spencer. Considering that she doesn't have many solid allies left in the game, Anastasia would benefit from trying to patch up these relationships. Sure, Natalia didn't outright throw the comeback challenge, but I don't think Natalia necessarily wants Anastasia out right now, so if Anastasia extended an olive branch to her, I think Natalia might take it. As for Spencer, it's a little more difficult since they've gone after each other in past ceremonies. But since Spencer was willing to help Anastasia win the comeback duel, this relationship can be repaired if Anastasia wanted to. However, considering how badly Anastasia wanted Spencer out after the comeback challenge, that might not be possible. But that does lead me to step 2. Watch what you say. This might sound broad, but Anastasia does need to watch what she says sometimes. It doesn't always have the desired effect. For example, when Anastasia told the red team that they should vote out their strongest member if they lost the episode 11 challenge so they could beat Linda, they didn't have the warmest reception to it. In fact, they almost threw it back at Anastasia by suggesting that the blue team throw the challenge so they could do it themselves. Based on this, I feel like Anastasia should keep in mind that her opponents are generally smarter than she thinks, and that her words may not produce the effect that she wants them to have. They could end up turning more people against her if she's not careful. That would also make it harder to accomplish step 3. Pull together a solid alliance. Anastasia has only really had one solid alliance in this game, and it's extremely on the fritz right now. So if Anastasia wants to remain safe, she needs to pull together a majority as quickly as possible. If this requires her to patch up things with Natalia, ensure Logan's loyalty, reconnect with Isabel, and bury the hatchet with Spencer, then she should do it. Anastasia really doesn't have as many connections as some of the others, so she kind of has to work with what she has. And considering her generally outspoken demeanor, it's unlikely that she'll be able to convince a group of people who have had little contact with her to join her side. And this leads me to step 4. Manage your threat level. If Anastasia can't make her image seem positive, the next best thing is to make herself seem less threatening. Based on her recent interaction where the red team rebuffed her attempt to get them to vote out their strongest member, I'm not convinced that the red team thinks that Anastasia is very smart. If this is the case, Anastasia could capitalize on this. After all, Anastasia is a model. If anyone knows about portraying a specific image, it's her. If Anastasia can find a way to lower her threat level by making the red team think she's not very smart, that could buy her a few rounds and get her closer to the finale. And if she is going to get to the finale, then she needs to accomplish step 5. Find a number 1 ally. With Marissa gone, Anastasia could really use somebody that she can rely on for support. Ultimately, I still think that Anastasia and Logan would be a great duo, as long as Logan stops flipping. And considering their friendly rivalry from early in the season, I can imagine the two of them making a run to the finals in a friendship finale. Whether Anastasia comes out on top is questionable, but she does have a decent chance if she's up against Logan. Speaking of Logan, let's talk about him next. I could still see Logan winning this season, but his strategic actions in this game aren't painting a bright picture for him. However, there are still some steps that he can take to better his positioning in the game. And it all starts with step 1. Choose a side and stick with it. So far, Logan has developed a reputation for flipping back and forth between alliances. He starts by forming an alliance with the men on his team, then flips to join the girls in episode 4, before flipping back to eliminate Marissa in episode 9, and then flipping again to vote out Linda in episode 10. This isn't a good reputation for Logan to have because it makes him look unreliable as an ally. So if Logan wants to succeed in the game, he needs to pick a side, stick with it, and show his allies that he can be trusted to stick to the plan. And on the topic of Logan's allies, let's go into step 2. Be wary of your connection to Spencer. Now don't get me wrong, I'm glad that Logan is able to have positive conversations with Spencer, and I'm glad that Spencer is able to interact with someone without having them hate him by the end of it. But right now, Spencer's reputation in the game isn't very positive. And if Logan's connection with Spencer becomes highlighted, Spencer's enemies could start targeting Logan as a result. I don't want Logan to become guilty by association, so he needs to watch his connection with Spencer, and he needs to be ready to cut him off if necessary. Logan's reputation should be his number 1 priority at this point. And to help build a positive reputation for Logan, we go into step 3. Emphasize your cheerful nature. From a personality standpoint, I've always viewed Logan as a likable guy. He just seems like a cheerful guy who cares for others and doesn't want to hurt others. If he can continue pushing the narrative that he's a nice guy that wants to raise the morale in the camp, people might be more willing to keep him around. After all, it might be easier for someone to stomach keeping him around if they know that he genuinely doesn't want to hurt anyone. But on that note, this leads me into step 4. Prepare to hurt others. Due to Logan's kind demeanor, he's constantly looked to as the swing vote. And because of his status as a swing vote, he's constantly in a position where he's going to hurt someone whenever he attends an elimination ceremony. This has caused Logan a large amount of distress in the past. And this might sound mean, but Logan needs to prepare to face more of this in the future. If Logan is going to continue his status as swing vote, then he has to accept that he's going to hurt people with his decisions, and that he needs to make sure that he can recover from hurting others, or else it could hurt his chances at winning. But there is something that could really improve Logan's chances at winning. Step 5. Time your physical strength. Logan is an Olympic medalist, so he has above-average athleticism. He could use this to his advantage later on in order to win individual immunity challenges. However, he has to be careful about not showing his physicality too early, because it could make him an easy target during the merge if he can't win his way to the finale. So if he wants to make it to the end and win, he needs to time his physicality at the right moment so he can catch people off guard with his above-average physicality. Although, since I'm pretty sure Richard knows about Logan being an Olympian, this might be difficult to do. On that topic, let's talk about Richard next. Richard is in an awkward position where he doesn't really have any super solid allies anymore. I still think he could win with an underdog storyline, but some major things need to happen if he's going to go down the path to victory. And it all starts with step 1. Learn to feign forgiveness. Richard has been betrayed several times throughout the series, and he hasn't taken it well. I think he has the right to be mad, but based on his interactions with Natalia post episode 9, I feel like Richard believes that when people betray him, there's no hope of rekindling a bond with them. But in a game as flexible as Disventure Camp, you can't afford to turn your back on people at the first sign of trouble, because you'll eventually run out of people to turn your back on. If Richard does want to move forward in the game, he needs to learn how to either forgive quickly, or feign forgiveness, otherwise people might view him as being too stubborn to work with. And that won't help him gain allies. However, there is something that Richard could do to gain allies. Step 2. Leverage your loyalty. All things considered, Richard has been pretty loyal. He's tried not to deviate from his original alliance, and even when he was a part of the group who targeted Marisa instead of Spencer, his group still consisted of Linda and Logan, who were 2 of his early allies. That's loyalty in my eyes, and in a game filled with betrayal, having someone on your side who has only shown themselves to be loyal is a great thing. So, I think Richard could get more allies by leveraging his reputation as a loyal player. This would help lead into step 3. Find a solid number 1 ally. Up to this point, I would say that Richard has gotten pretty close to Logan, and I think you could argue that they seemed completely loyal to each other early in the season. However, because of Logan's recent betrayals, I don't think their bond is as strong as it once was, and I don't think Richard feels like he can trust Logan 100%. So, if Richard wants to make it far, he needs to find someone who is reliable enough to trust 100%. As of recently, it seems like him and Natalia might be able to forge a strong bond, but with Ivy gone, Zaid could be a good option as well. And having an ally from the other team could improve his position in the game. This then leads into step 4. Be aware of your positioning. Throughout this season, I feel like Richard hasn't fully recognized that people are going to betray him even if they like him as a person. In hindsight, that might be the reason why Richard takes the betrayal so personally. But going forward, I'm hoping that Richard realizes that being a good person can only take you so far, and that he needs to be aware of where he stands with everyone on a strategic level so that he can take shots at other people before they take shots at him. It might not be the most in-character move for him, but after what he's been through so far in this season, I think he could change. But if we're looking for something that he can do without changing his character, here's step 5. Push your physicality. Despite his age, Richard is a pretty decent physical competitor. He won both the coconut and the dodgeball challenge for his team, beat Tristan in the duel challenge, and successfully pulled Ivy and Benji over the line in the pole challenge. So much like with Logan, I think Richard can afford to rely on his physicality if needed in order to get himself out of tough spots. And if Richard can make it to the finale, this physicality could be the difference maker that allows him to win it all. And if he does all these steps, perhaps this underdog can finally get a taste of victory. And speaking of an underdog, let's go to the final camper on our list. We have Spencer. Spencer has dodged many bullets in this game, and I'm pretty sure he's the current record holder for the most votes received in one season, at 19 votes and counting. So if he wants to make it to the end and win, he needs to cover a lot of ground. And it all starts with step 1. Stop making enemies. I know this seems obvious for any camper, but it's extremely relevant for Spencer. Spencer has made so many enemies on his original team, and he's already made a couple enemies on his new team, which is not ideal. And I know that he wanted to make enemies on his original team so that they would all vote for him, but that was stupid for his long-term game. Did he seriously expect everyone on his team to forgive him after that? If Spencer wants to survive, he seriously needs to stop making enemies out of people. But if there's one thing to credit, he's at least trying to open up. That leads me to step 2. Keep bonding with Logan. In recent episodes, Spencer and Logan have successfully bonded, even to the point that some parts of the fandom began shipping them. But regardless of what your opinion is on the mathletes, this relationship is a major positive for Spencer. Right now, Spencer needs to keep this relationship going, because Logan is one of the few people who might want to keep him in the game. And if this is the case, Logan could help Spencer gain the numbers necessary to run the game. Speaking of numbers, that brings me to step 3. Reconnect with Jade. Much like with Logan, Jade also has a good relationship with Spencer. Spencer might be a bit wary of Jade due to her willingness to vote him out in episode 8, but at this point, Spencer doesn't have any room to be picky with his allies. He has to take what he can get, and let's be honest. Jade is probably one of the few people that Spencer doesn't have to pretend to like, since the two of them seemed to get along when they were on the same team. I don't care how you do it, just reconnect with Jade. It'll help you in the long run. And while he does that, Spencer can also do step 4. Find a totem. I know this is sort of a cop-out answer because you could technically say this about any camper, but I think it's especially relevant for Spencer. I've seen people throw around the idea that Spencer has a massive amount of plot armor. But whether you believe this or not, it's a fact that Spencer is still a massive target. So if you ask me, an immunity totem would come in handy for Spencer right now. I don't think this will happen, and I hope it doesn't happen, but it would certainly help his situation. But there is something that Spencer could do that I think could realistically happen. Step 5. Leverage your threat status. It goes without saying that Spencer isn't well liked in the game, and he's probably being targeted by a decent amount of people. However, he could use this to his advantage. If Spencer wanted to, he could go to some campers and say something like, "These guys want me out. Do you really want to do their dirty work? As long as I'm here, they're going to target me and not you. So you should keep me in the game." It's a gutsy strategy, but Spencer really doesn't have anything to lose by doing it. If it fails, he goes home anyway, so he's not risking anything more by trying it. I could see this strategy working, and Spencer better hope that something like this works. Because if he wants to win the game, he needs all the luck in the world. I guess this is a perfect example of how winning Disventure Camp is never an easy battle. And that about does it for this video. What did you think of the video? Do you agree with my thoughts? Do you disagree? What do you think each camper needs to do in order to win? Either way, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like the video, click subscribe if you really like the video, and for some ending words of wisdom. It's okay to confess your feelings to someone you love. But just be aware that not everyone is interested in watching you make out in front of them. Thank you, and farewell.